Hey friends, how you doing today? It's Rick here, and so my talk tonight is something I've touched about before, but I'll be a little more specific to one topic tonight. And essentially, as we hit the end of the year, something to think about. This topic is basically not being afraid to admit that you're wrong. It's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. Give you an example. How many people in your life, I'm one of them, especially many years ago, I like to think I've mostly gotten past this, but I'm guilty as charged years in my past in my life. How many people do you know that when something goes wrong, it's always somebody else's fault? Perhaps you're one of them. Perhaps you've done that in your life. Most of us have at one time. It's always somebody else's fault. Especially those who are habitually failing at everything. You see these, I have friends of mine, I hate to say it, 50, they're in their 50s, 40s, 50s, late 50s and stuff, and they just can't seem to get it right. Numerous marriages, always failing in relationships, can't hold a job, always have issues with friends, family, they're always fighting with family. I'm sure you know these types of people. Some of you may know them and may have them in your family. But they never did anything wrong. It's always somebody else's fault. The problem with that is, well, it stems from a very bad sense of pride and ego. We think in our minds, if we admit we did something wrong, that makes us weak. Might be thought of as less people. Maybe even laughed at. But the reality is quite the opposite. The reality is once you are able to admit that you did something, that you're part of the problem, then you start the healing process. Then you start thinking straight. Now look, I'm not going to say that every time something happens to you in your life, it's all your fault. There are many times when it's not your fault. You may have, growing up throughout your life, you may have had a bad boss, or maybe you had a bad marriage because you had a bad spouse that cheated on you or abused you, or whatever the case may be. Maybe you have family members that are just, stolen things from you, whatever. I don't know. And we've probably come through some of those, some of those issues. But if you consistently, through your life, are always pointing the finger, and you constantly have a track record of failing at things, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad person. Okay, take relationships. Maybe the problem is you're a very good-looking man or a very pretty woman. And the problem is when you pick somebody to go out with, it's always based on somebody else that's very pretty or handsome. And that's what it's based on. And let me tell you something. There's nothing wrong with that because all of us would like to have something pretty or handsome, right? That's when we grow up, we see things on TV and we want to have somebody attractive. But if all you're basing your relationships on is that's how it starts, and that's the bulk of it. Oh, what a handsome man or a pretty girl, and show off in front of my friends and exciting and all this stuff. That's going to be, you may not think of it, it's going to be very boring very fast if that's all it is. And maybe that's why you constantly have failed relationships. Not because you're a bad person, but because you're choosing the wrong type of person. So you're part of the fault. Jobs. Maybe you're not a hard worker. You don't realize that you're really not a hard worker. You're trying to cut corners. You don't realize it. Maybe family members. Maybe you haven't been dedicated to them. Maybe you never call them or contact them unless you want money or something like that. But you don't think you're doing anything wrong. A lot of times we have to look at ourselves. We may not think we're doing something wrong. We may not be instinctively, criminal-minded or heartless people, but we tend to be very selfish. We think of ourselves all the time. This is a society where everything's about me, me, me. We see that. It can't be about me, me, me all the time. Now, there's times when we have to think of ourselves, like, for instance, being in the military. I'm coming to my last year of service starting next year, starting in January. And anybody who's retired knows what I'm talking about. Full-time retires, knows that your last year of service is very important to get your stuff together. You have to start actually before that, which I have done. But you have to make sure all your appointments, your VA appointments, and all the different paperwork and what you can have for medical and all that stuff, so that when you retire, you're ready. Because if you wait to do it and you retire, it's much more difficult because nobody cares about you when you retire. So you have to think of yourself. But I mean, that's an instance. But generally speaking, in life, if it's always about you first all the time, and there are a lot of people like that, and I'm sure you know them, I know them, at some point, usually hits around late 40s, early 50s, when you're single, you get child support all over the place, you're being chased for child support, you don't have any money. I see these types. This one screwed me over, the lawyer screwed me over, my family doesn't care about me. But somewhere along the line, you got to stop that mentality. Song I played yesterday when I was young. I think I played it around this time last year. Great, or maybe even in the spring. Great song, covered by many people, Glenn Campbell. Please take a listen to those lyrics. It's about a person who thinks his whole life is all about him. Everything's a joke. Sexual relationships with people, using his friends, this and that. And now, when he was young, youth passed him by, and now he's older. And he says at the end, time has come to pay for yesterday when I was young. You don't want to get to that point, because you want to realize that it's a sign of strength to admit that you're part of the problem, especially if it's habitual. Any problem that comes, you have to think, all right, it doesn't have to be habitual, but any problem that comes, what did I do to help this fail? Maybe you did nothing, but maybe you did. And you learn from that. There's nothing wrong because you learn from mistakes to get better. But if you don't want to ever learn, it's always somebody else's fault. Like we see with a lot of people, it's always somebody else's fault. I've never been able to do anything because women screwed me over, or jobs, they didn't care about me. They wanted to get this one because he had a different race and he was very racist against me. All this nonsense. If that's ever all it is, and you're lazy, you don't work hard, you never think about the reality of what you don't do, maybe you need to. You know, pride is a terrible thing. Bad pride is very bad. It's one of the 7 deadly sins. And it'll kill you. It'll put you down. It'll destroy you as a human being. And that's what this really is all about. And I had a whole segment on pride before, so I'm not going to go into that. But we have to stop thinking it's bad to admit that we made mistakes. No, it's not. It's the start of you mending yourself and doing the right thing. I had a bad relationship. Why? Maybe I married too young. Maybe I married for money only, looks, or rushed into the marriage because I was lonely. Now, next time I do a little different. I'm going to take my time, find somebody who's more like me, so to speak, has my interests at heart. Same with a job. Maybe I can't hold a job because, you know, my skill set is not the jobs I'm taking, or I'm not working hard enough, or maybe I say things I shouldn't say at work, or whatever. And I have to, even though I don't mean to do those things, maybe this is what I have to look at myself. Maybe a family friend is like, it's my family. This one doesn't want to talk to me. Well, maybe I said something to offend them and I don't realize that I did. Maybe I should ask them, did I do anything that was wrong? If I did, I'm sorry. I'm really, truly sorry. It maybe something you did, or, you know, you don't think you're doing, but it's been habitual over the years and it's irritating them. They don't want to talk to you, okay? So that's my talk for the night. Never feel that you're a weak person for admitting you're wrong. No, you're a very strong person for doing it. And a person has finally got it in life. Now you can start at ground zero and go only one way, up. It's Rick here on, what is it? It's 30 October, Halloween tomorrow. Isn't that something? And, geez, I hope you have a great night. I know I cannot wait for the holiday season because this is my favorite time of year. Everything, hockey, football, everything's going on. It's just, it's a great time of the year. I hope you enjoy it. God bless and have a great night.